Funding for the Stories of Louisiana's Black Church is provided by.
When morning came to Louisiana, we were hopeful, not hibernating. We were stronger, ready for what's next. And together, as we build anew, Blue Cross stands ready to support you.
Hi, I'm Patrick, employee at ExxonMobil and pastor of Believers Assembly of Baton Rouge. I'm so glad ExxonMobil is sponsoring the Louisiana Black Church on LPB, and I hope you enjoy watching it.
And by CSRS, building stronger, smarter communities together.
Entergy is proud to support programming on LPB and greener practices that preserve Louisiana.
The goal of our environmental and sustainability initiatives really is to ensure that our kids and future generations can be left with a cleaner planet.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.
We don't have enough confidence in our system right now.
Extreme cold exposes problems that must now be fixed.
I wanted consistency.
The leap of faith in homeschooling and why it's trending.
Change is going to come, and that was instilled in many of us.
Exploring the unique sounds of the Black gospel.
Hi everyone, I'm Kara St. Cyr.
And I'm Andre Moreau. We'll go in depth on those top stories in a moment on this week's edition of SWI.
But first, the governor used his Thursday COVID briefing to announce the White House had okayed his request for emergency help dealing with the aftermath of that severe winter blast.
And on that thought, all that weather, what made Shreveport such a target for so many problems? Viewers in East Texas were also hard hit. They had temperatures sub-zero. In a few minutes, we'll talk with the Shreveport Mayor, Adrian Perkins, about his city's trifecta of icy misery.
The COVID news from the governor is more encouraging. Louisiana Department of Health reporting the numbers of infections, people treated in hospitals, and those losing their lives all continue to trend downward.
And there's better news about COVID vaccines. Also to report, Louisiana is receiving more doses next week than expected and expanding those who can get it, like teachers, K-12, staff and daycare workers, people 55 to 64 with existing health problems.
We have received some good news over the past several weeks, and then again this week with doses being increased that in terms of the allocation coming to Louisiana. And this most recent increase, the previous increases have been primarily on the Moderna side. This next increase coming next week is on the Pfizer side. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is the shipments coming in for this week have been delayed. And the White House talked to us about this on Tuesday, and that's for a variety of factors. Employees were having a hard time getting to the pharmaceutical manufacturing sites in order to package things up, but then you had winter storm affecting closures at various airports where the distribution occurs. And so our large shipments of Pfizer and Moderna for this week, which normally would come in on Monday and Tuesday, haven't yet arrived. And so we expect to get those shipments. We don't know when. It could be Saturday or Sunday, and then Monday or Tuesday we should get what would have ordinarily come on next week anyway. And Dr. Cantor is going to talk more about this, but bottom line is we're going to have to double up next week as best we can in terms of the number of doses that we administer in the state of Louisiana.
And now we look at other news making headlines across the state. Check out this picture taken Mardi Gras Day in the French Quarter. Barricaded streets kept anyone out who wasn't booked at a hotel there. COVID's cancellations of all events Mardi Gras and the restrictions that shut down bars and the sale of booze worked as planned. But don't you think the frigid weather that blew in on cue made certain not many would venture out where nothing was happening? ExxonMobil this week hosted a virtual event to scout for a wider network of local suppliers in advance of the big $410 million refinery project at the plant in the capital city. The company says it plans to spend $226 million in Baton Rouge and set aside at least $3.5 million for diverse suppliers and $1 million more for Baton Rouge-based companies. The state Republican Party censored GOP Senator Bill Cassidy for voting to convict former President Donald Trump at his second impeachment trial. Cassidy joined 6 other Republicans and 50 Democrats voting against Trump in the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Trump was acquitted since 67 Senate votes were needed. Cassidy says he listened to the evidence and said Trump, who was charged with incitement of insurrection, was guilty. He has been battered by state Republicans. As Cassidy gets railed for his guilty vote on Trump, comrade Steve Scalise jetted down to Florida to visit with Trump. Says Scalise, "We've always been friends." Those state lawmakers said no to recent proposals to raise the state gasoline tax. Another Republican legislator is hoping to persuade colleagues that the time is now past due to attack the multi-billion-dollar backlog problem on roads and bridges. Representative Jack McFarland of Winfield is facing the same noise that dashed other efforts, though, but he still is holding out hope. The blast of extreme winter weather this week left Grand Isle feeling more like Green Bay. It made driving nearly impossible for some. It was tough to stay warm, especially with the power out. I talked with Shreveport's mayor and a lead local meteorologist. Interstate 10 that runs from Texas to Mississippi reopened Thursday after being closed much of the week. The I-10, just one of many roads and bridges that closed for being coated in ice and snow. Throughout Shreveport and across the top of the Butte, some roads are still closed. For a time, Shreveport Regional Airport closed. No planes coming or going. This map brings you up to speed on the status of power outages. Red is where they are still most concentrated. Near zero temperatures in Shreveport caused sections of pipe in the city's water main to break, impacting everyone, including some hospitals.
Records, ice, snow, and a lot of trouble for a lot of the city services.
Yeah, we have. We haven't seen a weather event like this in the city of Shreveport in about 91 years, and even this is going to surpass that. Our systems are being stressed to a degree that we couldn't have imagined, and we're already going through a whole lot here, being in the middle of a pandemic and all the other things that have occurred in the city. So yeah, it's a pretty trying time for our community right now.
Water main breaks in several places. How much of the city doesn't have water that they can drink?
A majority of it, actually. And it's not necessarily about the supply of water to homes. It's actually the water pressure. Most of our homes has water in the home, but it's the water pressure that's extremely low.
Are there still boil advisories or?
Yes, we still are under a boil advisory as well, because you place your city in a boil advisory for a couple reasons, but the one being is that we don't have enough confidence in our system right now with bacteria and other things that can get into our system because of all the breaches in it. So we're telling our citizens to boil their water and whatever they're getting before consuming it, just because, again, we don't have the confidence that it's safe to drink as is.
So we're talking about, if you said a majority of people, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people.
Yes, the city of Shreveport is roughly 200,000 people, and we actually give water to some of the surrounding areas. So you're probably talking about over 200,000 people that are on our water system.
And what about power to people?
Fortunately, our power grid is actually running strong. I had a conversation today with the government liaison from SWEPCO, and they have been running strong throughout. They say they don't even have any other scheduled, blackouts, rolling blackouts for the community, and that's a good thing. I've told my community in a press conference that, hey, consider it a blessing that you're going to have power, but we probably will not have water.
The people who've been forecasting these series of brutal winter storms have worked nonstop to keep up, like KSLA-TV Chief Meteorologist Jeff Castle.
Of course, in the Deep South, Louisiana included, there's really no way to deal with snow and ice when it comes down. We just don't have the equipment or the infrastructure to deal with it. So we're dealing with basically snow and ice covered roads. Treacherous travel out there. Even today, because of the weight of the snow and ice, seeing a lot of reports of people's carports collapsing under the weight of the snow and the ice. Starting to get some power outage issues as a result of some of the freezing rain, and just overall, it's a mess up here. It's a real mess, and we're not going to see any improvement except gradually over the weekend. Basically, we're relying on Mother Nature to take care of removing the snow and ice.
What kind of emails are you getting the most from people right now?
The emails about water. Everybody's saying, hey, what's going on with our water system? Why can't we have a better water system? Just a bunch of emails about water throughout the city. We have some pipes in our system that are over 100 years old, and we went out about a year and a half ago for a bond proposal that failed by 20 votes. So a lot of our citizens are calling for that bond proposal to come back up so that we can do that overhaul. They're seeing how important it is to have a upgraded, more resilient water system right now. And unfortunately, it's just one of those lessons that you don't want to learn, but we're here, we're going to get through it, and we're going to do what we can to make Shreveport stronger.
COVID is certain to leave lasting marks on our schools and how our kids learn. This week I talked with a Baton Rouge family who checked all the boxes on trends COVID has triggered. Baton Rouge mom, Jennifer Scott, had thought about homeschooling her young children before COVID, but the idea didn't take root until the schools emptied their classrooms in the early days of the pandemic.
I was working full time, my husband's working full time, and so that was a challenge to two full-time parents working, plus now we are teaching children at home.
Now she and her family are part of a growing trend, state and nationwide.
Last year when they were home, about 2 weeks after doing virtual learning, we just had decided that we're going to take the leap and homeschool. So we actually decided at the end of last March to homeschool them. We have thought about homeschooling them before, so this wasn't the first thought in our mind. We have a couple of friends who homeschool, and so I reached out to them and started talking to them, and that helped us with the decision.
Was it scary?
It was, and it still is. So it was very scary, but we have gotten into a routine and everything is flowing pretty well.
Viviana is 5 years old and in kindergarten. Hugh is 9. He's in 3rd grade.
4 beryllium, Be9.
Good. And what are those?
The first 4 elements in the periodic table.
Good. Good job, buddy.
So we have set up a table and a desk. My son has a whole desk and he sits there and that's where he does his schoolwork. And my daughter, we bought a table, like a round table, and I sit with her when I'm teaching her.
What was the breaking point that made you feel that you needed to have your kids at home?
The breaking point was not knowing what this year was going to entail, this school year. I did not want them coming in and out from home, virtual schooling to back to school. And then someone had COVID and they're going back home to virtual, and I wanted consistency.
Tell me about the 14th Amendment.
In 1868, the 14th Amendment made former slaves U.S. citizens and paved the way for the civil rights movement.
Jennifer says her kids have adjusted pretty well, and the network of help makes a big difference in adapting to the change.
We have joined a co-op and we have met many families, and they have lots of new friends. We meet with the co-op twice a week, and there are more homeschool activities than we can join.
Her family's experience is far different than the chaos seen at many schools across the country. Chaos that raises questions about kids' learning.
the lack of consistency. You know, children, just like adults, we all need consistency, and children learn better when they have a routine. We are going to homeschool another year, and we're happy where we are. We're happy with the slower pace of life. They're able to do a lot more activities that are out there than they would if they were going all day. Right now for our family, it's been a good thing. And like I said, we're going to take it year by year and, you know, just go from there.
COVID has forced change. Jennifer believes more and more families will choose homeschooling, at least in the early years, because they can control what happens and even start kids a year earlier than regular schooling.
I feel like it is, I guess, a little bit more beneficial for them to start at a younger age if they're going to homeschool. And a lot of parents across the country for 4 and 5 year olds, yes, they have started homeschooling them. And that is an age, though, that they're learning to read, they're learning to write and hold a pencil, they're learning how to spell. So it is a critical age on getting all of those things before they get to first and second grade. So there is, you know, they're not just playing all day.
The decision to homeschool is weighty, Jennifer says, but the support from a growing legion of those choosing it reassures her of its value.
In Baton Rouge, at least, there are a lot of homeschool families that will open up and let you know how they did it. And I have talked to so many families that have helped me, you know, on this journey this year that have made it a lot smoother.
And it's up to 10% now, the number of students who are homeschooled.
It's estimated that $40 million is spent each year in Louisiana on litter removal, abatement, and enforcement. Discarded trash finds its way into storm drains and eventually watersheds.
In Baton Rouge, 81 tons of litter have accumulated at the Burden Botanical Gardens. It's created layers of litter almost 20 feet deep.
Just educating the public that we can't throw out our cans and our plastic bottles is not going to solve the problem. We're going to have equipment placed in our wetlands, our canals, and our channels in order to remove that litter out of our wetlands and prevent it from creating issues like we have here.
This month's Louisiana Public Square explores Louisiana's litter problem and how the state, municipalities, and people are combating it. Litter in Louisiana. It airs Wednesday at 7 p.m. on LPB and in New Orleans on WLAE. To learn more about the program, you can visit lpb.org/Public Square.
The church organ and those powerful voices in the choir make up that distinct sound coming from the black pulpit. For some, the music is what really makes the black church black. But like everything in history, that music and that sound have evolved over time. Tonight, as we continue our Louisiana Black Churches special, we take a look at where that sound comes from and how it's sewn into the American fabric. In the 1940s, blues music was just getting popular. The bass of the electric guitar was gaining mainstream traction. The sound seemed to stick everywhere and with everyone. Except these guys.
Glory, glory, hallelujah, hallelujah. They'll clap their hands. Since I laid my bed.
During that time, they believed that if you put a guitar around your neck and you come into church, that you was going to hell. You know, if you sung the blues, you was doomed for hell.
Reverend Sterling Wright has been performing with the legendary Lighthouse Gospel Singers since 1948. He and his brothers and one of his cousins were discovered singing quartet-style gospel music when they were kids. Just simple melodies and simple beats. Nothing complicated. But simple made a name for this very small group.
Well, we would go like from Wilson, Louisiana to Baton Rouge, Denham Spring, Pine Grove, different little country towns that we would go to sing.
The Lighthouse Gospel Singers focused on using what they had naturally, Their hands, their feet. Wright says you couldn't get away with electronically altering your voice. You had to be able to sing.
I'm gonna move in the room with the law, in the room with the law. So it was songs like that, and some of them was, had a slower beat, and some of them had a faster beat and so forth. But it was all hand clapping and hip slapping that we called it back then. No music.
The group's manager, Gerard Robinson, says their signature style evolved from something painful in the Black experience.
The suffering that was endured by our ancestors and our forefathers, the only way to basically express that without causing trouble on the plantation was through the soul of their music.
Natorsha Davis, a vocal music professor at Grambling University, says Black gospel is a Negro spiritual of a different name, but the origin is also more complicated than that.
Harriet Tubman used certain songs. They used certain songs as signal songs, follow the drinking gourd, and that drinking gourd just happened to be the river. And to freedom was to Harriet Tubman because she was carrying them to freedom land. And that's one example. They had several examples of those kind of message songs that they used as signaling for one thing or another.
It was a coded language that only they could understand. How it was delivered was just as important as what it meant. A Negro spiritual would carry long notes without much variation. One person would sing, and the rest of the field would mimic that same line. The song would continue like that until the end.
In the church, you'd have call and response, different song titles. The old 100s, I love the Lord, He heard my cry. Guide me, O thou great Jehovah. All of those songs were examples of call and response.
But over time, you see that change to harmonies. 2-part, to 3-part, to 4-part.
Well, what we're dealing with is traditional quartet singing. Okay, these days in time, you more contemporary choir, praise team, praise and worship style of singing.
This gospel group was formed when 4-part and 3-part harmonies dominated the church. Electric guitars, drums, and even the piano were taboo in a lot of Black sanctuaries. The beat was reminiscent of blues clubs and juke joints that didn't carry a message the church wanted to hear, so those harmonies were all they had until around the 60s and 70s. Now you've got your choral sounds, and the organ, and the guitar. You have artists like Byron Cage and the Clark Sisters marrying worldly and gospel sounds.
That emotion, that feelingness, and that's the one thing that we all can do as one body, as one unit. They didn't just sing, they also joined hands or locked arms. They walked togetherness. So it's, again, that one mind, being in one mind and one accord in the same place with one vision, one purpose in mind.
Traditional quartet music is still rooted in the traditional gospel music feel. And what I mean by the feel, I mean by the movement, the long melodies of traditional gospel music. And so what we've been able to do as Legendary Lighthouse Gospel Singers is move from so much of the long tone into upbeat.
The Legendary Lighthouse Gospel Singers are singing a different tune these days, one that's more secular. It has a beat you can sway to, something that was once forbidden.
The songs now are more upbeat, because people now are more emotional than they were then.
It's clear the world has played a role in Black church music, but the church also left its mark on the world. The long notes and organs you hear in popular songs all come from the pulpit. For instance, Sam Cooke's music has distinct origins in the church. He uses his voice to drag out long melodies and give a message of change, which is a deeply Black sentiment.
When you get to the part that he says that, oh, just like a river, it's been a long time coming. And if you listen to his gospel records, they have the same tune, the same music.
The gospel music you hear on the radio, will it last? The soul, the hope, and the emotion that it carries. The Legendary Lighthouse Gospel Singers think yes, because when there's suffering, there's always hope. And when there's hope, you'll always find soul.
This is an ongoing special highlighting Louisiana's historical Black churches. Join us next week for another segment focusing on the church and its future.
And everyone, that is our show for this week. Remember, you can watch anything LPB anytime, wherever you are, with our LPB app.
You can catch LPB news and public affairs shows as well as other Louisiana programs you've come to enjoy over the years. And please, like us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
For everyone here at Louisiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Andre Moreau.
And I'm Kara St. Cyr.
Until next time, that's the state we're in.
Entergy is proud to support programming on LPB and greener practices that preserve Louisiana.
The goal of our environmental and sustainability initiatives really is to ensure that our kids and future generations can be left with a cleaner planet.
Additional support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum located in Jennings City Hall. The museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is an historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting, with support from viewers like you.
Funding for the Stories of Louisiana's Black Church is provided by.
When morning came to Louisiana, we were hopeful, not hibernating. We were stronger, ready for what's next. And together, as we build anew, Blue Cross stands ready to support you.
Hi, I'm Patrick, employee at ExxonMobil and pastor of Believers Assembly of Baton Rouge. I'm so glad ExxonMobil is sponsoring the Louisiana Black Church on LPB, and I hope you enjoy watching it.
And by CSRS, building stronger, smarter communities together.